You know that feeling, when someone asks for a photo of you, and your first instinct is to avoid it, not because you hate yourself, not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because something about turning yourself into an image feels strangely uncomfortable. Most people never notice this pattern. They just assume everyone wants to be seen, shared, documented. And when someone doesn't post photos of themselves often, people tend to fill in the blanks. They call them insecure. Private, awkward, antisocial. But a lot of the time, none of those labels are actually true. There's a certain kind of person who experiences identity more internally than externally. Someone who doesn't feel the same emotional reward from displaying themselves online. And that difference is rarely explained correctly. People who don't post their photos often aren't necessarily hiding. Sometimes, they just don't experience themselves through constant visual validation. Psychologists have studied how social feedback affects the brain's reward system. For some people, posting a photo and receiving reactions creates a strong dopamine response, a feeling of recognition, belonging, even reassurance. But others process identity differently. Their sense of self feels less tied to being observed, less dependent on being mirrored back by other people. And neuroscience suggests this can be connected to heightened self-awareness, sensitivity to evaluation, or simply a nervous system that becomes overstimulated by too much social exposure. Not everyone experiences visibility as comfort. For some, visibility feels like pressure, especially if they grew up feeling watched, judged, misunderstood, or emotionally exposed in subtle ways. A child who learns to protect parts of themselves early on often becomes an adult who values psychological privacy without even realizing it. Not secrecy, privacy. There's a difference. And this isn't better or worse than people who love sharing their lives openly. Some people feel most alive when they express themselves outwardly. Others feel most stable when parts of them remain untouched by public opinion. Neither is more evolved, neither is more authentic. Just different nervous systems, different experience, different relationships with attention. What's interesting is that people who rarely post themselves are often deeply observant of others. They notice tone changes, energy shifts, unspoken emotions. Because when someone spends less energy performing themselves, they usually spend more energy reading the room around them. But there's also a quiet trade-off. Sometimes the world assumes silent people have less to say. Sometimes people who protect themselves too carefully begin to disappear from their own story. And that tension can feel hard to explain. Still, there's nothing abnormal about wanting parts of your life to exist without an audience. In a world that constantly encourages display, choosing not to turn every moment into proof can come from something deeper than fear. Sometimes, it comes from needing your experiences to feel real before they feel visible. And if this feeling has followed you for a long time, it probably makes more sense than you thought it did. There are certain emotional patterns people